So as the U.S. soccer program takes stock and examines itself in lieu of the disaster of failing to qualify for the 2018 World Cup, we'll have to consider a American soccer program that's mired in mediocrity. Our player pool overall is stagnating. If you look back, pre-2000, we're still pretty much in the same place overall. As we've almost reached 2020. Many people thought that by around 2010, the USA would have caught up with the world elite soccer nations by now, but that's clearly not the case. And if you look back since 1930, the U.S. national team's overall record, because I like to examine things in the overall context, I don't put a ton of stock in one-offs or small sample sizes. Since 1930, the USA has 6 total World Cup wins, so wins in the World Cup finals competition itself. That's 1 win every 14 years on average. So if you want to look big picture, which the USA should, in light of this 2018 shocking failure out of an easy North and Central American CONCACAF qualifying region, we've got to look at the big picture. Where are we headed from here? Is the path we are on correct? And is this sustainable for the future if we want to ultimately reach the global soccer upper echelons among the elite global footballing nations? So it's interesting to examine our player pool today. There has not been a world-class player produced out of this player pool. There's one, Christian Pulisic, which is, he's young, still got some room to grow, but he's not quite world-class yet. There's some other decent players. There's a handful of players that are serviceable in top Division I leagues around the world, but for the most part, the U.S. national team player pool is pretty mediocre when it comes to the global standard. Not a ton of depth and not a ton of star power. So it's interesting to examine the current U.S. soccer player pool. It's kind of sourced from 2 main areas. We aren't getting a lot of production from U.S. clubs or U.S. programs themselves. So the U.S. has had to scour the globe for dual citizen players, so especially the German-American wave in the last couple of cycles, such as Fabian Johnson or Jermaine Jones. And you think in a population of 330 million people here in America, we'd be able to find enough quality talent within our borders, but we've got to go scour the globe for military based talent, dual citizen talent around the world, which, hey, we're happy to have them, but we are staking a lot of our player pool on this source. When, like I said, 303 million people, we should be producing more than enough in our own domestic soccer ecosystem. And then you see a lot of our talent, especially the younger talent today in our player pool, such as Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie. These guys are starting in the U.S. system, but end up going over to Europe for some of their most important developmental years in their mid to late teenage years. These key years where it seems like the USA tends to fall off the pace. Yeah, we have a lot of, we can match the rest of the world in terms of our youngsters, maybe 15 and under, 14 and under, but when it comes to actually producing senior level players, that's when our players fall off into mediocrity, whereas the rest of the world produces top-line international talent. So these U.S. players are essentially forced to flee the U.S. system in order to get a top quality, in order to have a top quality developmental path and to reach the highest tiers of the international game. Again, I'm happy that they're able to do that, but again, it takes extraordinary circumstances for players to be able to do that. Your average American soccer player cannot do that. You have to have a route to citizenship, family ties. Your parents have to move over for work-specific reasons, move to Europe for work-specific reasons. When you're young, and then you move over there with your family. Again, not very reasonable to base the main portion of the U.S. soccer talent pool on that route. And our domestic clubs don't produce much at all. A few players who maybe we've seen a few U.S. youth club onto U.S. college, university soccer, and then sign with MLS and then end up going to first teams abroad, like a Clint Dempsey. Hey, that's a great story, but those are very rare. Another one would be Jeff Cameron, who's been at Stoke in the English Premier League for a number of years. So yes, it can happen, but it's pretty rare. So our U.S. domestic system is not producing much at all, and what the U.S. soccer player pool needs is a strong production pipeline from its domestic programs or clubs. If you look at great soccer nations around the world, such as Germany, you see a strong base of productive clubs who are developing top-level talent. National teams don't develop players. It's not the responsibility of the U.S. national team program itself to develop the players. They simply just reap the benefits, pull in the players from the club teams, basically products produced by the clubs. That's all the national team is there for. And what you're seeing in the U.S. today, we've got one single club with an exclusive monopoly over the USA Soccer Division I sanction. That's MLS. Yes, it's divided into teams, but it's all one single club. Meanwhile, you've got 9,000 plus USA Soccer clubs with no hope of reaching USA Soccer Division I. And that is critical because if you open up the USA Soccer pyramid with promotion and relegation, open Division I, give clubs that hope, that incentive, all of a sudden they have reason to start pouring money into their club, into their infrastructure facilities. They have money to start signing players, signing coaches, developing talent, creating free-to-play academies, creating scouting networks, building their first team. A new hope would be injected into the entire American soccer industry. An anti-competitive market, which we have today, is terrible for innovation and growth. And we are basically killing incentive for 99% of the American soccer industry. It's no wonder we are struggling, why nations behind us are catching up to us, and why we are falling further off the pace behind the nation's top, or the world's top soccer nation. So it really comes down to one single policy. You've got to open the market. And this is not some wild conspiracy theory. It's basic policy used by 99% of the free world. It's a FIFA mandate. Merit-based competition for Division I, for the top of a domestic soccer ecosystem. So you want to improve the U.S. soccer player pool? You want to see all kids, or at least the maximum potential reached for our U.S. soccer player pool? We've got to open the market. We have 24 million soccer players here. Our problem is we're not properly leveraging the ingredients we already have here in America. It's not a soccer problem. It's not a soccer culture problem. We have enough players, enough fans here, enough infrastructure, enough wealth. We just have a completely upside-down, toxic system, full stop. So that's what it comes down to. Again, systems don't directly qualify or not qualify countries for the World Cup. I know that is true, but they can have a huge impact. And when you look at reasons why the USA missed the 2018 World Cup and why it continues to struggle today in 2018, it's simply because of one bad policy. No promotion relegation, no incentive for 99% of the American soccer ecosystem. So if you like this video, make sure to share it out all across your social media channels and also subscribe right here to my YouTube channel. And I'll talk to you soon.